You'll need to speak loudly. Morning, Don.
Morning, Ted.
I dragged you into the shop here to talk about your Suzuki record-holding motorcycle that we are trading hands with. And so as part of that, you've agreed to talk about the motorcycle, which from our prior conversation is somewhat like pulling hen's teeth with you.
Okay.
So I pretty much covered that. So Don, what I'm going to ask you to do is talk a little about what you did before you built this motorcycle, then what led you to this particular bike, and then what you did to this particular bike. So if you can do this in 10 minutes, we'll both be happy.
You want from the beginning of Bonneville?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, from the beginning, started out as Dick and I, won't mention any names, Dick Flory, were exceeding the speed limit over by Fort Klamath by quite a bit. And I realized that if I got stopped, I might lose my license. And since have a commercial license being a truck mechanic, I thought that's not good. So that's where the idea came to go to Bonneville. And I thought it'd be nice to go 200 miles an hour. So I drove out there in October of 2003 by myself, never been there, talked to people and looked around, and everybody was super nice. Decided that's what I wanted to do. So I started looking for a Hayabusa, knowing that would be the best bet to go 200. Found one in the spring of '04, did some minor things to it. It already had a full exhaust on it, so I had cams put in it and a power commander, and set out for Bonneville with Dick. And by the end of the week, we did 199.758.
Holy moly. Wow.
So we didn't get 200, but so I was very, very excited. Had salt fever. Came home, pulled the motorcycle completely apart, and a friend who put the cams in, Ryan, who used to work at Hanson's, he said he would work with me to rebuild the motor. I said, fine. Because I said, I wanted to learn how. I'm not a motorcycle mechanic, I was a truck mechanic. So he was busy, so I went ahead and took it all apart. And he was busy, so I put it all back together, and it ran. And we put it on the dyno at Hanson's, and on gas it ran. It put out 205 horse, 112 foot-pounds of torque. So I was jazzed. So Dick and I went back to Speed Week in '05, only to find it was too rough to run. I went through inspection, got up to the starting line, and Dick went over and talked to some friends from the Rogue Valley who had a pickup truck they were running called the Rogue Runner. And they said it was so rough they couldn't see their gauges. So Dick came back and said, Don, you're not going to go any faster. So using wisdom, and we decided not to run, stand around, watch. 2 hours later, a guy in a car was killed. Had 20 years experience. So that was the right decision. So '06, I heard about the motorcycle event, which is FIM AMA. So I had enough sponsorship money. I went to Speed Week, got it dialed in, came home for a week, went back to the motorcycle event and set the FIM world record and an AMA record. And then continued to set, I think, 5 more AMA records, national records with that bike. And by then I was in my mid-60s. When I first set the record, I was 59. I was in my mid-60s, decided I didn't want to go that fast anymore. 200 was, there's been some scary things that happened, and things happen quick at 200. So I decided I wanted to build a cafe racer. So I sold the Hayabusa. The motor went to South America. A guy from Finland bought the chassis. So I found a CB750, and I tricked it out. I put late model forks on the thing and different swing arm, and took it to Bonneville, set a record with that. But while I was in the timed mile, I thought I missed the exit, because things are a lot slower with the 750 than a Hayabusa. So I kept going. I said, nope, I didn't miss it. So anyhow, set the record. Ended up sticking a piston, So I sold that bike to somebody in the Bay Area. It was still street legal. Decided I wanted something faster. And the AMA came up with a class called Classic, which was pre-1981. Before that, they have Vintage, which is pre-1956, and then from then on, everything up to brand new stuff. So they put a class in there where people could run used, nice stuff. So I knew this bike here, being a 4-valve motor with needle roller bearings, was a good start. Almost 100 horsepower stock. So I found one in Washington, went up and got it, completely swapped it over, bought a AirTech fairing for it, which is a generic fairing for older 4-cylinder Japanese bikes. Did extensive work on the body, cut the fairings here and there to widen things out, narrow things up. Took it to Speed Week. No, I take that back. I took it to the BUB event, the motorcycle event, and ran 2 AMA classes, set records with those. Came back the next year, set 2 more records, and then in 2019, the following year, set 2 more records, and was planning on going back last year, and then the pandemic hit.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you've modified on this motorcycle?
In the situation it's in now, I run with and without a fairing. So I bought the fairing and modified it dramatically. I got a second swing arm and lengthened it so I could run an open class, which is an A class, which allows you to, it's for a race bike only. Built the motor twice. I don't know carburation. Stuck a piston like the Honda the first time, and the motor stock is 1,075 cc's. So that puts me in the 1350 class. From 1001 to 1350 is one class. So I set the first 2 records with 1,075 cc's in the 1350 class. When I stuck a piston, I decided I'd go bigger. So I got a 1327 kit. Low compression, did that. Of course, the motor had completely gone through. The heads had all new valves, ported cylinder head, Weber cams and hardened rockers and heavy springs. Bought a forged crank and put in it, and put it on the dyno, and it did 130 horse on the dyno with this motor. And that was pretty much it.
The carburetors are stock?
They are not. They're Mikuni flat side carburetors.
Okay. Is there anything mechanical about that motor that you would want someone to know? I noticed that it's got some anodized fittings for the, looks like oil supply to the head.
Yeah, evidently for racing those motors, and they're very popular for drag racing. They're just huge. They found that they would have a shortage of oil to the cylinder head. So it has external oiling, and that gets oil directly from the pump to the overhead and trickles down. And then of course it's got a Vance and Hines exhaust system on it.
What did you do to the chassis to prepare it for this?
The chassis, basically, I stripped it all down, and I tried to do things to make it good enough to go to a show. So I ground and welded every weld on the bike, every weld on the chassis I welded up and polished to have it powder coated, because when you powder coat, you can't put Bondo in there. They have to sandblast it. So I went through the whole thing, and everywhere I could find a stainless steel bolt or nut, I put that on there, and I put it in a drill press and polished the head and then buffed it. And then the ones that I couldn't get stainless steel bolts for, the wrong pitch, I put them in my drill press and filed it and polished the heads and clear coated them. And then, like I said, I ran 2 different classes with different swing arms and 2 different shock setups. And it still has the stock front forks on it.
They're polished though. And I noticed it's missing the front brake rotor.
Yeah, and Bonneville, anything that you could eliminate drag, be it taking grease out of a wheel bearing. You don't want pucks dragging rotors.
Did you take the seals off the wheel bearings on this motorcycle?
They still have the stock wheel bearings, and what I did, because there were not ceramic wheel bearings available for this, I took them, popped the dust cover off, washed all the grease out of them, and drilled an 1/8 inch or a 16th inch hole in the shield, put it back on, and put oil in there and put a dab of silicone on there. And that freed up the wheel bearings. And to run there at Bonneville, you're only required to have rear brakes because you have miles literally to slow down. And so I just run the rear brakes, and I actually take the pucks and push them away from the rotor so there's no drag there. Because I've run there all week, even with a 200-mile-an-hour bike, and never touched the brakes. You just don't need them.
So you, before the run, you push the pucks off?
Yeah, and I just leave them that way.
Okay.
And then if you need them for emergencies, you just have to pump them twice.
The gas tank doesn't look stock.
It is not. For this particular class, an open class, you had to change things from a modified bike. And there's a list of several things to change. And the things that I picked was to extend the swing arm, 10% lengthening the wheelbase, and a non-stock gas tank in non-stock mounting positions. So it has the stock gas tank and a stock swing arm that it can be switched back over to a modified class.
Okay, so you could run, you designed the bike to run in multiple classes.
Yes, there can be, I've set 6 records of 8 possibilities that I could run.
Okay. And we have the records and photographs of the records you set. Now, one thing that we were just talking about was the VIN number, which is behind the mounting bracket for the fairing on the top of the steering head.
Correct.
And we're going to take a peek at that to verify that.
Okay.
Good. Is there anything else? And so the silly question, redundant question is, why now are you selling the motorcycle?
I'd been doing it since 2004, and I'm 74 years old. And to go to Bonneville in August, it's in the desert on the white salt, it's 4,200 feet, and I have some health issues, and it just is tiring to work on the bike at that altitude and to do all the things necessary. In the past,